Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to our first NPS Empower Hour. We're really excited to have you with us tonight to talk a little bit about what it looks like to form your union and then what comes after. And so we have some special guests tonight from some of our fellow DOI agency employees from the Bureau of Land Management. Chapters that we have formed with BLM, and then also chapters that have been in the works with organizing. And so we're just going to have a little panel discussion tonight to sort of pick their brains about how this whole process worked for them and what it is that they're doing now to represent their members and continue the mission of the agency. So before we get started, I do want to introduce myself. I am Stephanie Snow. I am the NTEU organizer that is working with the Pacific West region on organizing. My colleague Lee Fisher is also on this session tonight and will be joining us a little bit later. So I'll let Lee introduce themselves later on in the program. I do want to let you know we are recording this session so that we can share this out to folks who are unable to join live. And so just so you know that it's being recorded. And if you have questions as we go along, you can put those in the chat and we will field those as we go. And then also at the end of this session, we will have time for some Q&A as well. So joining us tonight, as I mentioned, we have panelists. This is going to be a panel discussion, so I'm just going to kind of be throwing questions at these folks and they'll be answering as they can and as it's relevant to their experience. And so we have Lauren Lieb from our NTEU Chapter 340, Zoe Davidson from our Chapter 341, David Kennedy is from NTEU Chapter 342. Natalie Clark is one of our organizers that worked very hard on our BLM Colorado organizing campaign, and you'll hear some more about that in the discussion. And also Jessica Sellis, again, is another organizer that worked with us and is still working with us on the campaign to organize BLM Oregon State Office. So we are glad to have all of you here, and I'm just going to launch into this. And so if you, I'll go ahead and give you our first question, and then I'll throw it to each of you to, give us your experience and your answer. But initially, if you would just before you answer, introduce yourself, tell us a little more about yourself, and then we will all know who you are. So let's begin. Let me stop sharing this screen and we'll get started. So the first question is really about the union in the workplace and what the reasons are that you and your colleagues really wanted to form a union in the workplace. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there to our panelists. If you want the panelists, you can go ahead and and put your cameras on, and then that way you can give me a wave or whatever when you're ready to answer something. So talking about why you first introduce yourself, and then tell us why at your workplace that you got involved in the union and there was and why there was a reason for wanting to organize in your workplace. Lauren, can I start with you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Lieb, she, her. I'm the chapter president of NTEU 340, which represents BLM employees in New Mexico. I believe we were the first BLM chapter to organize with NTEU. And, really, the big impetus was the forced relocation of BLM headquarters employees out west and to the, basically four corners of the United States. I'll let Zoe talk a little bit more about that. But then the real driving force was, and essentially we were just tired of good people leaving for problems that we could fix through a union, whether it was favoritism, discrepancies in awards, issues with, performance evaluations, just so many things. We just wanted to have a say in the decisions that affected us. And yeah, that's why we formed a union.
Thanks, Lauren. I'm going to go to Zoe next.
Hi there, I'm Zoe Davidson, and I started with Lauren in New Mexico, and we organized that chapter, and then I moved to HQ, and my colleague who's not on right now, Panchita, and I and several others organized BLM headquarters, and we did that all remotely through COVID. All internet calls. There was very little in-person organizing. And yeah, so I was touched and moved by the fallout of what happened when in Trump won, they proposed moving BLM headquarters out west from DC. And I happened to be in DC that summer, 2019. On a detail. And so I was there in the conference rooms when they told everyone that, and there was crying and, people like just devastated about having to leave. And, they have kids in school, so they couldn't move out west with the BLM. So they'd have to leave these careers that they love so much. And there was no say in that, and no bargaining. And so as soon as I got back to New Mexico, Lauren and I, joined forces, and we yeah, and so is the best thing that I've ever done professionally speaking, as unionize, work on a union campaign and several after that. And I'm just so thankful for our union every day, even though we're facing all of this crazy stuff right now. And I will never work for a non-unionized place again. And if I ever am in a place that's not unionized, I will unionize them again. So, it's worth it. It's worth the energy to put into this. It's a very important, and it'll change your life.
Thank you, Zoe. I'm sorry you're not feeling well, so we'll try not to beat you up too much on this call. Lauren, going back to Lauren, do you remember when your chapter was certified? Do you remember?
Yeah, we were certified February 2021,
Okay.
I believe. So yeah. And yeah, I we started. So I remember because I was like, it was kind of like my shit or get off the pot moment. It was Labor Day of 2019 where we started just kind of like, sorry, like loosely talking. Like, should we do it? Should we do it? Like, let's do it. But I don't think our organizing campaign really kicked off until the first part of 2020. So about a year, all said and done for our state office.
Yeah, and most all of that really was during the pandemic. So it was all really reaching out remotely and trying to contact people without being able to be in front of them and be on the ground for the most part. So it was a very interesting and sort of new environment for all of us. And now we're a little more familiar with having, with being able to reach out to people and do things remotely, but it was a shift, right? Okay, let's go to David.
Hello, everyone. David Kennedy. I'm the chapter president of NTEU 342. It's got a nice ring to it. I always love saying those things together. I'm one of the fortunate people on this panel to have basically come into a workplace that already had a union in place. It was not NTEU. It was actually NIFI, which I'm sure, or not NIFI. Well, NIFI kicked it off, but we were with AFGE at the time. And over the course of my work there, we decided that switching to NTEU was in our best interests, and we've been happy with the decision ever since. Why my unit actually organized in the first place, I like telling this story, is because in the 80s, they weren't going to pay people to drive to the woods to do their job. They were saying that this wasn't work hours, and they weren't going to pay them those hours. So in that moment of unfairness, people got together, they organized under NIFI and said, this is an incorrect use of our time. One of the many benefits, that I see being in the union is there's so many different rules that we operate under as federal employees, and give the tiniest slices to management, they don't understand them all either. But when it comes time to figure it out, it's either they get to decide and do whatever they want, or you have a group of people who understand the rules, who have that conversation with management to be able to get the rules followed to the benefit of the employee. Right now, I have a little trouble with that conversation, as you might expect, but we're the ones who have been looking at it. We're the ones who understand it, and we're the ones that it matters to, because it's our lives and livelihoods. So I can't imagine entering into a workspace and not having that power, not being able to speak to management in a way that says, actually, I understand the rules too. And moreover, I have control of how we interpret them. To that end, I've always worked in union places. I've worked in steel mills. I've worked in all kinds of different kinds of jobs. Always sought the union position, always tried to do union work. And I've been very lucky to be the president of my chapter. It's good work and I'm happy to do it.
David, when did you come over to NTEU? How long have you been with NTEU as
I was
union?
doing that math and I don't have the clarity of memory that Lauren has, unfortunately, but I'm gonna say it was 3.5 years ago, mid-pandemic. Yeah, just long story short, we really weren't feeling like we were being serviced by our previous union. I don't want to talk bad about other unions. They just did not see our unit as something that they wanted to devote a lot of time and people hours to. NTEU is totally different. It's, like I said, it's night and day.
And you had, and we may get more in depth into this later, but you had sort of an older contract you were working under with your former union.
Oh yeah.
Quite
Yeah.
old.
That thing was, so 09 was the last time it was signed. And if you go back into the annals of history, we're talking early 90s was the last time any substantial change had been done to it. Like, it was real old and a whole lot of handshake language in it, which was not going to support us under these current administrations. NTEU showed up, we renegotiated our contract, got it signed right under the wire. Is it being followed? Not exactly, but we have a contract in place. We wouldn't have the contract with the strength it has if we hadn't organized further with this group.
And just so people know, where are you located? Where's your chapter?
I work in Northwest Oregon district of the BLM. I work normally as a wildlife biologist and then do my union duties as I can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So since we're kind of talking about your area, I'm going to go to Jessica next, so that Jessica can talk about the campaign that we have been working on with you. And if you've been following along as a viewer of this session with our organizing campaign and the other sessions we've talked about having add-on elections to our initial bargaining unit that we file for. And so what we would be doing with Jessica's group would be exactly that, an add-on election for them to join David's chapter. So I'm going to hand it to you, Jessica. Introduce yourself and then, kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Sealis. I work for the BLM as a botanist for the Oregon-Washington State Office. And myself and many others were hopeful members of Chapter 342. And I am one of the folks that helped organize, one of the organizers with no position yet on the chapter. But basically, so the folks at Oregon, Washington at the state office level have had some interest in forming a union for a while. I used to be on the Northwest Oregon district, and honestly, I did not realize that the state office was not unionized. So when I came over, I was a little perturbed. And so when Stanton Nielsen, he's kind of the head organizer, came up and started looking for a group, I jumped on board. And honestly, so this how the state office is organized. We have a lot of folks working in different areas, different states, and so I think a big motivator I mean, Trump, this new administration was a big motivator for the state office to really, start moving, and we moved as fast as we could. To try and get organized because a lot of folks were really upset about remote work being taken away. And so that honestly, that one thing was the main thing I heard from a lot of state office folks. Their remote work agreements were really important to them. I mean, they built their lives around where they lived, obviously, how they worked at home, were able to work from home, and having those agreements just canceled made them realize, oh, we don't have like an agreement doesn't mean much unless you have someone else to come and say, hey, yes, management, you have to follow this. This is not something you can just sign and say, yep, we're all good. You can work remotely. And then to just strip it away the second it doesn't work anymore. So that was a major reason that I think the state office was really energized to get organized and form a union. So, yeah.
And you gathered your signatures rather quickly.
Yeah, so I went through and did some back calculation of that. And so basically we formed our organizing team in late January. And we got the go ahead to start organizing and collecting 1187s about February 19th. And then about a month later, we got 50% of the state office signed up. So I think with this administration change, it was not a hard sell to get folks signed up to become union members. And so, yeah, it was very quick, and I was very frenzied during that month, coming in early, staying late, working through lunches. I mean, it was a lot of time in that short amount of time, but we got there quick. You know, I could explain the unfortunate part of that, but but for now, that was a big win for sure.
And what's the size of your bargaining unit?
So we had 121 folks signed up, and that made up 54%. And so, around 240 people or so.
Yeah. Amazing. You guys did such good work and in such a quick turnaround. It was impressive, to say the least. And Natalie, I'm going to go to you now. If you'll introduce yourself, let us know where you're from, and talk a little bit about your campaign.
Sure. I apologize if my video and audio are swapped here or lagging. I'm on two different devices. Is it sounding okay?
It's fine.
Okay. All right. So I had to do two different devices for video and audio. So sorry for that. So my name is Natalie Clark. I am the BLM Colorado Deputy Preservation Officer. And for you Park Service folks, I know we use all different terminology, but I'm basically the state archaeologist for BLM Colorado. I live in Grand Junction, though our state office is in Lakewood, Colorado, on the other side of the mountains. And that goes into part of why we chose to organize. So the Colorado State Office started organizing in January of 2024, I think. We got to about 35% signatures by November of 2024, and we got that final push about 2 weeks after the beginning of November. You can imagine why. But really, we started organizing, one, in anticipation of a second Trump administration, just knowing what happened the last time, and knowing how tumultuous it could be for our positions, seeing what happened at headquarters, especially for me. I live in Grand Junction. I lived here when they did the move, headquarters moved here. And so I saw really how that affected everyone. Like Zoe, I think we both detailed in DC around the same time. We didn't run into each other, but I was also detailed in 2019. And so I saw what was happening there, and I just knew what could happen here. So that was one reason. Another reason, we had some internal issues. I think I echo what Lauren said, just losing good people for silly reasons. And the other thing that was happening is our program leads at the state office were really feeling like our autonomy was being removed. We felt like our jobs as leads was not and is not being recognized as much as it used to be. So we're having less ability to set budgets for our programs, less ability to set strategic goals for our programs, all of that. And so, one of the questions I get from folks when we were organizing was, why would I sign on to a union? I really like my supervisor. And our answer was always, well, it's not about your supervisor now. It's the continuity. Like, we want to be able to have consistency, supervisor to supervisor, administration to administration, to just know what's expected of you and to be able to continue to do your job, not being worried about where you're going to get yanked. And so that was the kind of the main drivers for us in Colorado. Another driver is, like I mentioned before, I live in Grand Junction and was hired for the state office while living here. And that has happened a lot since we've discovered that telework and remote work is really effective. A lot of us have been hired to the state office and work all over the state and do not want to live in Lakewood, Colorado. Multiple reasons: cost of living. You saw my kid run by earlier. I can't afford childcare in Denver, despite the, slight bump to my salary for living there. But so there were a lot of people in the state office who were concerned about losing their, not remote, but their duty station locations across the state. So it's kind of my long-winded version of all the reasons that we decided to form a union. But yeah.
Thank you.
I'll take you on where we are in the journey. So I forgot to mention that. So you'll see I don't have a chapter number with my name. That's because we don't have a chapter. We are really hoping to be chapter 3, 4, 5. But that didn't happen. And so we actually filed in December, I believe, and were held up for numerous reasons, frivolous reasons, one could say. But we were going to vote in April, and that vote, due to executive orders, was put on hold. We were going to vote again in June. That also got put on hold. So we are holding out hope that we will be able to vote for a chapter soon.
Thank you. And thank you for clarifying where we are in the process now. And then I am going to go back to Jessica, because the Oregon State Office is in much the same situation in terms of the election being held in abeyance. So you want to speak to that a little bit, Jessica?
Yeah, so like I said, so it was March 24th. The timeline was impeccable for this, really. It was March 24th that we got to our 50 signatures, and NTEU, the next 2 days later, we had our filing the petition on March 26th. And on March 27th, the executive order excluding unions came out. So the day after we filed. So that was a little bit of a letdown. We saw some movement after the stay was put in place. And so, we had postings around the state office talking about an election coming, a petition being filed, etc. And then the stay was lifted. And basically, we've been stalled ever since as NTEU is fighting, NTEU and AFGE, and everyone is fighting this exclusions executive order, which makes it so that the BLM, one of the agencies impacted, cannot form unions for really ridiculous, non-applicable reasons. And so we've been in a holding pattern ever since that stay was lifted.
Yeah, and so just in case folks don't know what we're talking about with the exclusions executive order, because I think it is important for this NPS campaign to talk about it a little bit. March 27th, the exclusions executive order was signed. And that executive order named about, I think, 26 different agencies and departments that the administration wanted to exclude from the current Federal Labor Management Relations statute. And BLM was one of the agencies that was on that list. NPS is not on that list and was not on the list of the additional agencies that were added by executive order about a week ago. There were a handful of other agencies that were sort of added to be excluded from the right to organize and bargain. And so NPS is still protected under the statute, the Federal Labor Management Relations statute. And you do, as NPS employees, still at this time have the right to organize, petition for election, and form your union and begin collective bargaining. And so there is a distinction, and I think I'm glad we were able to have Natalie and Jessica on tonight in order to kind of talk about, where we're at in that process. And then even though those elections are at this time being held in abeyance until all of these cases work their way through the court system, we are still organizing there, and we are still communicating and, treating this just like any other organizing campaign, because we fully expect, to get some relief, hopefully, from that executive order. And in fact, NTEU was the first to file a lawsuit against the initial executive order in March. And so our case is pretty far along, farther than the others along in the court system. And we have asked for a summary judgment on that case. And we're expecting to hear from a ruling on that summary judgment really any day now. So, that's something that we're really tracking so that we can get these folks back on track and get these elections back on track. But it's important because, as National Park Service employees, you are not impacted at this point. So we want to get the NPS regions to election as fast as we can, so that we are not in a situation like we are with our two BLM chapters that are on this session tonight. Okay, moving along. We've talked a little bit about the organizing campaign, what it took to reach out to people and get people to sign the 1187. Is there anything anybody would like to add about that process? Just, while you were organizing and having those conversations and trying to reach that 50% mark to file for election? Go ahead.
Yeah,
Lauren.
I just would say, there's no shortcuts to one-on-one conversations. You want to have a conversation with everybody. That's how they know that there's a union organizing campaign. Obviously, you can start, putting up flyers in break rooms, things like that. But there's nothing more effective than that one-on-one conversation. And I will say, sometimes people are like, how do you get people to sign? Like, how did you convince them? It's like, you don't. You listen. the majority of the time is asking like, and being, because again, like I can sell candy bars, to a sugar addict. I can't. But it's when you really care about something and you really care about your coworkers and you really care about like the work that you do, and the conditions that you're working in, you want it to be better. And so you want to talk to people about like, what are the issues facing you? Like, what would you want to improve about your job? What do you like about your job and you want to keep? And you start having those conversations like, hey, like, that's what we can do through the union, through our union. It's going to be us doing it. And I just really think that that's something that's like, you can't emphasize enough. And honestly, introvert by nature, but I found it so rewarding to be able to talk with and really get to know my coworkers on a much deeper level because we're standing in solidarity with one another, in these fights. And that organizing campaign that you're doing right now lays the groundwork for a strong contract campaign because you're taking like, we started tracking, okay, what are the major issues that like people are feeling? Because I will say a lot of us, some of us are state office employees, probably not going to have the same experience as you all as like park service employees where like, we're in offices, but even in our field offices, we have a lot of field going employees. We have our own park rangers patrolling rivers, these wilderness areas, things like that. People who are having to deal with Bundy type, ask like, you know, anti-government folks more and more these days. There's safety issues, there's heat abatement issues. There's a lot of things that that are important to me, but may not be important or I didn't realize to somebody else. And when you have those conversations, that's when you learn what the issues are and you're better able to connect with them about like, hey, well, this is why we're forming the union. Like I'm not going to ask anybody to do something that I haven't already done. Like I signed my 1187. I would gladly pay triple the dues, to have a say, and to be I'm a proud card carrying union member. And I just think that like those campaigns are like so important just to get out there, talk and listen. It really is just about listening because they're going to have to come to it themselves. Everyone's going to have a different point of entry. But they're all going to be super valid and it's a really rewarding experience. And then also, once you get someone who is interested, you always have an ask like, well, can you ask somebody else? Who do you know? Who are you friends with? Who do you eat lunch with? Because that really is how you get that momentum to get to those like 1 month turnaround times for an election filing is finding out what those social networks are and really utilizing them to your advantage.
I know that, well, our NPS employees, in a lot of, in parks, they're scattered out. In the regional office, they're scattered out all over the region and also into other regions and around the country. And so, it's challenging to figure out how to inform everyone or educate everyone that this is actually happening. Even before you have a conversation about the 1187, but just getting the word out. And so I know with BLM, it's much the same in some places where, as you mentioned, Lauren, people are out in the field or they're in, you may be in the state office, but then you have all these field offices and regional offices, and people are not all centralized necessarily. So, and I think, Jessica, I think you mentioned the same thing. And I know with Natalie, we had some of, those conversations when we were organizing with the Colorado State Office. So if anybody could just kind of chime in and talk about how you spread the word and just, let people know what was happening. And so they could kind of be in the loop with communications. I thought
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I'll speak to that just a little bit. Also, I got a low power mode notification on my phone, so I want to make sure and talk before my phone dies. But basically, I would agree with everything Lauren just mentioned, and I will say that my duty station doesn't have a ton of state office employees, and like I said, all of our employees, the state office is scattered even all over the country. So we weren't centralized. And really, the nice thing is when you do start to organize, a whole list is generated of all of the employees in the office. and you keep track of how you're contacting them, who's contacted them, when, etc., whether they've signed. And that was a huge help to me. And honestly, I just started going down that list. At first, I started with people that I had somewhat of a connection with, and some people were really jazzed about it and they wanted to contact people. So they would ask me for people on the list. And I think the biggest thing to me was being responsive. So showing that you're following through. If you get asked a question that you don't know about, make sure and tell them if they want more information, if they want to contact people and they want some suggestions, then give them to them. So I think being responsive was a big deal. And it took a lot of time. I was always responding to a text, a chat. I was asking Panchita and David questions because I didn't know the answers. Another thing, so just as a starting point, what I started doing was I would send someone a Teams chat, and most of these people I didn't know. So also seconding Lauren's, I got to know a lot more people, and got to hear their concerns, and we got to kind of connect, and that was really neat. But I would contact them on a Teams chat, off duty hours, and I would say, hey, can I get your phone number to talk to you about to talk to you during non-work hours about a non-work, situation, basically. And one thing I would say is I made sure to ask for their number and then programmed it into my phone, because I think giving the number sort of left it up to them, and they don't know what they're contacting you for. So I would then send a chat being like, hey, we're organizing, and if you want to have a call, or I'd call them, I'd say, when is a good time to call? So it really was one-on-one, like going down the list and contacting people individually. And yes, you can get help, like satellite people, even who aren't on the organizing committee, will start contacting other people. I know I had a couple real rock stars on our team who, weren't on the team, but just went through and contacted everyone they knew and got a lot of 1187 signed that way. So yeah, I think that following up and one-on-one individual contacting and getting their number and following up, not giving out your number and hoping, is a good strategy.
Thank you. I'm going to pivot a little bit from the sort of organizing process to what does it look like after, right? And so you've done all this work, you've got all these 1187s, you've gotten people to sign. We, have filed the petition, had the election. I know that that the chapters that are on here won their elections by huge margins. And so, we're confident we're going to have a win. We get our win, we get our union certified, and then what? Like, what does it look like on the other side of that? And so I know that Natalie and Jessica, you're still kind of waiting for that experience, but everybody else has had that after election experience and really what it's like to stand up your union following the election.
I'll go real quick because, honestly, day one, any kind of change that management wants to propose, they want to change your work schedule, they want to change parking lots, they want to change uniforms, pump the brakes, notify our union, notify your coworkers who are basically your elected board members, your stewards. You're gonna have all of them. You're gonna have official time, basically paid time to handle these representational issues. But any kind of change, management has to inform the union, your union, and you get a briefing and you decide whether or not you want to bargain over that change. And in some cases, it doesn't happen at all, because you work it out, you talk it out together. So the power you have, regardless of whether or not you have a contract, because we are still in this interim period where whatever. any existing policy that, like any existing handbook that already governs your workplace, if a manager violates that, you can file a grievance. The same thing with like a past practice. If there's an established way of doing things, like for us, our maxi flex, we didn't have to like tell our supervisor in advance of, what days we're going to be coming in for 7 hours, with days for 9. If they want to change that, halt, stop, you can't. Because that's more than a negligible change to our working conditions and conditions of employment. So it's like you feel the power day one. And then you get to also educate employees, everyone in your bargaining unit about their rights. And you really get to start like working on them with issues. But you also, to be honest, like you're not always fighting with management. Like a lot of times you're just resolving things informally or helping to calm, like to like, you know, have an employee who's like really scared going into a meeting with their supervisor, and you're as a union rep like in there, it just helps calm them down because they know they've got someone in their corner looking out for their best interest because management has HR, they've got EEO. That's all for management. Unions for you. And so it really does help. And there's a lot of times where even supervisors would come to us like, hey, can you help with the situation? Because we're solution oriented. We're not always going to have to file a grievance or take it to like, level 10. We always start off at the easiest, most informal solution. But we will never, ever compromise on the like interests of our members and employees. Like we will always be ready to fight when we need to. So, and you feel that power in the workplace. And honestly, we still feel it even now. Like you don't have to wait to act like a union. You don't have to wait for some piece of paper. Unions existed decades before we got the legal standing to do so. Even now, we're filing petitions. We're circulating petitions and marching on the boss, delivering them to bad managers, doing messed up stuff. You don't have to, like, as long as you know your rights, even in this environment, you can still act in concert collectively and change things for the better. So.
Yeah, and I'll just add, Lauren said it all great. The other thing is that you immediately have legal representation from an NTU lawyer, and you immediately have someone to go to ask questions. And so, it's just like this whole new world just opened for us in that there's all this legal advice you can get now for, the cost of your dues, which is amazingly affordable. So, day one, we were able to support members immediately. And then to this day, I'm still getting, today I got a letter from our lawyer, our NTU lawyer, like with all of this, citing all this case law about reasonable accommodations because the agency's like basically ignoring someone and that's illegal. And so even now I can go to NTU and they are so responsive. And we even get questions from other people in other unions because we learn more and we've been so successful with our NTU lawyers. I'm so thankful for NTU and I'm so thankful we chose NTU for our union. So and then of course there's all the logistical stuff about setting up your stewards and your board and all that stuff, and that's all fun stuff to do too. But I think the biggest thing is just making sure you're including the whole unit in all of your conversations and, trying to get people to come to your union meetings if they're still figuring things out. There are all sorts of stuff you can do right away, but yeah, those are the big ones.
And that's a really good segue, I think, into a question that has been coming up often with this NPS organizing campaign. And I think those of you who have, negotiated contracts and been in that situation already, bargaining, can probably speak to this. But one concern is, this is going to be a region-wide unit or chapter. And so how do we make sure, or how how would you make sure that you're representing everyone? So, you're representing everyone from a trails person to a law enforcement officer to people in the regional office. I mean, there's just such a wide variety of people. And I know that you have experience with that in your contract. So what are some of the methods that you use to make sure that that you're representing across the board all of your members? And any of you can jump in, but I'd like to hear from all of you and David too. Yeah.
I'll just say real quick, you make sure that your contract bargaining team, like your union bargaining team, reflects the demographics of your bargaining unit. So you want to have like somebody from each one of those divisions, each one of those positions, each like any kind of like all the age ranges, demographics. You want your contract team to reflect your like the scope of your bargaining unit. And I will say you want to have a big bargaining team, and you also want to make sure that you have open negotiations because you want to have a transparency where you can tell every employee what is going on at the bargaining table. And you can also negotiate for observers. That's what we did. And they didn't know that that wasn't going to be in their best interest. But when you can actually have employees come and watch the bargaining sessions to say like, and get feedback in real time, ask them what they thought about it. What do you want to see? How do you like hold us responsible too? Those are all like that's probably going to be like the most important. But then there's all such easy ways of just like sending out surveys, asking for the priorities. Like you're not going to have to reinvent the wheel. There's so many great resources out there, like UC Berkeley Labor Law, like Jane McAlee. Like just read all of her books. You will be an expert in how to like fight and win big in contract negotiations and making sure that like it does represent everybody, because you don't have to like you're not going to do the horse trading where you're going to sacrifice the interests of one sector for somebody else. You really can like make it all about like everybody in that in your bargaining unit through really easy tools, but just honestly because always realizing that this is a workplace democracy, so you are always centering like the rank and file voices at the center of every decision, every conversation we make, and try to get as many people involved in that process as possible. And that's what you actually get, like that real representative contract that, people love and people are proud of.
Thank you. David, do you have something to add to that?
Absolutely, 100% cosign. The polls or sensing, as we call it locally, where we just reach out to the unit through our variety of sources, through email lists, through everything else that we have for people, and getting a sense. Do you get 100% of people responding? No, you get the people who care enough to actually have an opinion on the issue. But that's how that works. Also, the thing that I found in terms of like, are we representing everyone, is issues will come up over the course of just managing all the information that comes out from, in our case, the BLM. And believe it or not, I don't know everything. I'd like to think that I do on occasion, but I've been proven wrong so many times, I can't really say that I do. There's somebody on your unit who has such a wealth of knowledge on this particular topic that if you've had the conversations, if you're having the one-on-one conversations that have been talked about, if you're knowing the people in your unit, even if you don't know everybody, which is maybe not possible, you know somebody who knows somebody, and they actually understand this topic at hand, that can give you an understanding, can tell you what it's like for people at that level dealing with this particular topic, and you bring that to the negotiation table. Ideally, there's notes, you got some papers, you got, that one-on-one conversation or two, or you meet with a work group and bring that information forward. But you're all in this job together, getting all of you together to make the best contract serves everybody. And by and large, in my experience, people get, get that idea. The other thing I will say is that negotiations in a contract can be difficult. People across the table from you, But for all the things that you do at your job, there is policy for. That policy has been made by management to do the best work possible they can. If you're having such a hard time with the topic, you say, fine, let's do policy. Maybe policy isn't exactly what you like, but it's an actual static snapshot of where things are today, so that in, say, a few months, the entirety of the administration changes, you have the old rules to point at. You get to be able to say, whatever this new stuff you're bringing up, we're actually going to follow the rules that we agreed to in this contract that made sense last year. Tell us why they don't make sense this year. The benefit of what you get out of a contract, even if you don't understand everything, there's policy, somebody's dealing with that policy. Ideally, you find somebody who knows about it and can tell you about it so you can go into that negotiation space with a better understanding. Or the policy itself, while not being perfect, can still be improved in the future and or is better whatever else they're going to serve to you later.
Oh, Stephanie, you're on mute.
Still on mute.
Okay, here we are. Sorry about that. We are nearing the end of our time, and so I'm gonna fire like one quick question at you, see if you can answer it in like a word or a phrase. So this one is, what is the most significant item you negotiated in your first contract? Or one of the most significant? Go ahead, Lauren.
Telework.
Telework.
Yeah. Telework, but I will say, like, just speaking for NPS people, we actually got guaranteed tiers and like percentages for each employee for performance-based awards based on your actual performance. So they're like eliminating subjectivity and performance-based awards. That's money. So
Zoe.
Yeah, in addition to telework, I will also say, sounds crazy, but hours of work, the plain and simple, defining those, like, so bad supervisors don't have to ask one person for different like rules than another person about how they do maxi flex or whatever. So I think those kind of basic rules are just so helpful.
And David.
Yeah, easy answer is telework, of course. But for us, and it kind of speaks to, down at the field office district level, boots. Boots are a big deal for us. A lot of folks in my unit work in the woods daily. And providing personal protection equipment, in this case footwear, has been a big issue for our unit. And I'm very happy to see what we got in there.
Great. Thank you. Okay, and here's my final question before we open it up to some before Lee gets to jump on, and then we open it up for Q&A. We all know that this is a challenging time for federal workers in light of the attacks right now on the federal employees. And so what do you see as the value of forming a union in this climate that we're experiencing today?
Information. We get more information from our union emails than, and the right information. So I think that's one of them, is information. But just the solidarity in this time. Oh my gosh, it's so amazing to have. We have our Friday calls with people. People just, they love them, they join them, and we can dispel bad rumors, or we can speak to some of the rumors, and then we can also share the information. And it just has brought us all closer together.
Anybody else want to chime in on that one? Lauren?
yeah, I mean, that collective power, that realizing that you're not alone. You know, you're never going to be like, if you're part of a union, you'll never be alone. There's always going to be somebody to like stand with you no matter what. And I just think that like it's it really is something like you make it what you want it to be. You know, you get out what you put in. And like, especially just thinking about for us, we're building community relationships, community coalitions, like with the people like New Mexico Wilderness Alliance, Sierra Club, all of these people who have a stake in our public lands and who want us to keep working in these jobs. That's how you can actually like leverage more power and still like build real, yeah, real strength, not just within your workplace, but outside of your workplace. And I think that's like when you actually start to see people like really going to bat for you and you can strategize together, and get that community support, like it's just so powerful. And like it just kind of like really reinforces the fact that like, you know, that there's so much strength in collective actions. Like we've got the numbers, we are the many. And we're only gonna like we can only lose if we give it up in advance. So I don't know. That's how I'm feeling.
Thank you. David or Natalie, you want to add anything?
Yeah, unions have the legacy of when times got hard, when things were unfair, people organized together in groups and brought the issues to the people in power. This is what we do as a society to be able to band together and organize to be able to get the results that actually make sense for us. Like I reflect daily on how much we are tapping into the way this has been done for, since people started organizing. It's what you do. How else are you going to change these things?
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to add, I don't, you know, this country has never really been welcoming to unions. I mean, it's always been hostile to some extent, right? So I think that's just the legacy that we have unions that have been in place for hundred years. You know, like we have other unions that have been around for a long time, and just anyway, what I've really appreciated, even though there's been a lot of defeat the last few months, I've really gotten to know my coworkers better. I've gotten to know different struggles better. I've gotten a lot more, like Zoe and Lauren said, information that I'm armed with, that I've been able to share with people. So all of that has, I think, made us a stronger work unit at the very least. But maybe we'll get to also be a union chapter here soon.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and invite Lee now to pop on. Hi, Lee.
Hey folks, this has been great listening to everyone's stories. There's so much inspiration in each one of your paths and your campaigns, and in your existing chapters or organizing units. So I'm just so thankful that you all were able to take some time and join us today. We will open it up to questions if there are any questions from the audience. I'll give it a moment to see if anyone has any questions. You can either come off of mute or you can drop them into the chat. I see a comment here about how organizing for NPS in the IMR is really helping bring establishing some foundation in times of instability, is what this comment says. I see a common misconception in here too, that so often federal employees believe that they didn't have a right to organize. I hear that so often from NPS, but as we discussed already in this call, you all are one of the few agencies that does, and it makes sense to lock in that right. Any questions?
I would just say if our guests, our panelists on here wouldn't mind putting your contact information in, if you don't mind people contacting you, in the chat while we're taking questions, that would be helpful. I know that, you always have been welcoming to people contacting you for, questions or whatever. So if you don't mind, putting your contact information there, so we have that, and then I'll give it back to Lee.
Thanks, Steph. We'll give it maybe one more minute in case anyone's formulating a question or typing it out. And then we will probably ask folks for final kind of closing statements to wrap things up here.
Well, since
Yeah.
I'm on Eastern time and I'm about to turn.
Yes, thank you so much, Zoe.
Yeah, it's so good to see you too, Lee. I just wanted to say to the NPS folks, like, I'm so excited to hear that you're unionizing. You can do this. You've got this. It, does take some time and energy, but it's so worth it in the end. And you picked the right union. NTU is awesome. And it's, it's been really lovely to have the support of NTU in these hard times. So, yeah, feel free to reach out anytime. Happy to talk through, anything. Love talking to people about unions. And I was also classically very shy. And the more that I reached out to people and talked to people, it just really energized me. So I hope that you all can find that energy, and that motivation to talk to the next person, even though sometimes it feels daunting. So, yeah, well, thanks everyone for organizing this. Good to see everyone.
Thanks for joining us, Zoe. Well, with that, do the rest of the panelists, that you all want to share any closing thoughts, words of encouragement for NPS folks who are organizing?
I'll just add the best thing that I did when I started organizing was talking to Lauren and Zoe and getting the scoop and understanding what worked for them, what didn't work for them. So those connections are really important. So you utilize us if you can. We're happy to share our experiences and help you out. And we're glad that you still get to organize.
Yeah, and I would just say, like we are like really like stronger together. And, from the beginning, with all the successive, union elections for the BLM and now with Park Service, we always say, like, we stand in solidarity with you. We are here, like, you are not alone. If you need, really contact us day or night. We're on Signal, all of the apps, all of the messages, 941-315-2715 for those that are recording. We really do, like, anything that you all need, we are here for you. We are here to fight with you. And we do see this as, like, even with our other chapters like CFPB, FDA, our IRS chapters, like, you are part of one big union. And we stand up for each other and fight for each other. And that starts right now. So whatever you all need, however we can support you, we are here for you. We've been there. We are federal workers, fighting for federal workers. And so, solidarity forever. Yeah.
Love it. Natalie, did you want to add anything?
Nope, I'm all talked out for the night. I know Stephanie and Zoe are probably getting tired. So.
David, do you want to share anything to wrap up?
Yeah, it's, the beginning of your organizing journey. I've had the luck to be able to watch the state office and their organizing efforts, and for as quick as it went, and for as much galvanizing that had occurred due to the administration change. But watching this group become excited about the work, watching them get to know their fellow employees, getting them just, the opportunity to kind of stand at a slight remove and be able to watch people getting excited and feeling how it is to organize a group into a union. It's magical, I won't lie. So, and the other point that I really try to make in these sorts of conversations is we're trying to make our unit, BLM, NPS, anybody else, better. It's this, thing to push against when you hear that, we're going to slow stuff down, blah, blah, blah. We're making our jobs better because we are the ones doing them. Recognizing that all you're trying to do is make things work a little bit better for everybody who does the job. I mean, that'll carry you all the way through your contract negotiations to your first contract. You're trying to make your job better. Do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. Like you all said, like, we are stronger together. We are one big union. And I'm really excited that we are continuing to build power in DOI as well as we build out that solidarity kind of within a similar agency. Thank you all for joining us. And we'll see you in 2 weeks for our next Empower Hour. Night all.